Okay, so now we are going to talk about animation portion of this entire robot. So first of all, let's select all the things which are related to robots. So from disk to this chest, I'll hold Alt G to make this entire object into the one group and select this, and let's call it as robot. Okay, now let's go inside this robot. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to select, let's say, this neck, then this head. By holding control, I'm going to select that, then this hand, and this disk, which are basically eyes. Hold Alt and G, so I can select this. So if I move this over here, let's select this and let's move this, we will get this kind of selections. Now I'll select this chest also, and I'll move inside this null, and if you select this null, you will get this much portion. And also we have this hip also, so let's move also this one inside this null object. So now I have this entire thing separately. Now I'll go to the front view, and I'm going to enable my enable access, and simply move this axis over here, zoom in a little bit, and let's move this thing over here. Okay, now let's go to the top view, and let's bring this thing over here. Okay, properly at the center. Now let's disable this enable access. So basically after that, if you select this and if you try to rotate it, you will get this kind of rotations. Now I'll select this and I'll hit double click, and I'll call it as upper portion and hit enter. Okay, so this is my robot, this is upper portion, these two are wheels, and this is hip. Okay, so I'll select this robot. I'm going to change the duration of this animation up to 200 frames, and I'm going to increase the duration. Now I'll go to the start, I'll select this robot, and let's make this value 0. So it should initially it should be here. So now let's select this robot, and we will go to the top view, and let's zoom out, and we will bring this thing over here. Okay, make sure it should not be visible in your perspective view. Select this robot and create one keyframe at position Z. Go to around 60 frame, and let's make this 0, and we will create another keyframe. Now I'll go to somewhere around 150. I'm going to create one keyframe. I'll go to 200 frames, and I'll move this from here to here. Okay, like this. Now let's select this last keyframes, and we will move them a little bit up to 180 maybe, or let's say 190. Yeah, this much looks good. So if we see, we will get this kind of stuff. So if I select this and see my animation over here, I'll get something like this, and then this. I think this animation is quite fast, so select this last keyframe and move this towards the 200 frames, and let's move this a little bit backward, somewhere around over here. Go to the last keyframe, select this, and let's move this a little bit over here, and then create one keyframe and set. Okay, so if you see this animation, now we will get this, then we will get a little bit pause over here, then we will get this animation. Now after all of this, now we need animation for this wheel. So we will go to this wheel, and we will select this cloner, and we will go to the object, and if I let's move this over here so we can see this object. And if you see over here in cloner, if I increase the offset value, we will get this animation over here. So let's do one thing, let's make it 0, go to the start, we will create one keyframe at offset, we will go to the 60, and let's make this 30 and create another keyframe. Then we will go to around 40 frames, we will create one keyframe, and we will go to around 200 frames, and let's make this 60 and create another keyframe. And let's go to the start, and if you hit play, you will get the animation for this wheel also. We will follow the same procedure for another wheel. So we will go to our wheel, this wheel, go to the cloner, let's create one keyframe at offset, go to around 60 frames, hit press Ctrl Shift Z to regain the original position of this camera, and let's make this offset 30, create one keyframe, go to around 140, create another keyframe, and go to the last keyframe, this 60, and create another keyframe. So if I see this animation now, I'll get this like this. Okay, now after this 60 frame, let's say somewhere around over here, now I want animation for this one. So let's go to this hands over here in upper portion, let's double click and let's delete this end. Okay, so we have this hand. Now go to the coordinates, and over here what I'm going to do, I'll go to the freeze transformation, and I'll enable freeze all. So now I'll get all the values like this. I'll select this hand, and again I'll freeze all. Okay, like this. Now I'll go to around, let's say 60 over here, or let's say 70, let's say 80. Let's select this hand over here, and we will create one keyframe. Then select this hand, and we will create another keyframe like this. Now after that, I'll select this hand, and I'll go somewhere around, let's say 40 frames like this, and I'm going to press R for rotation. I'll rotate it like this, then I'll rotate it like this. Okay, and after doing that, I'll select this hand, and I'll create another keyframe. So if I see this, I'll get something like this. Now let's do one thing. We will select this and move this over here. We will get something like this. Now same thing we will follow for this another hand also. So let's go to around 70 frames. Select this hand. Over here we have created one keyframe at 80 over here, so let's bring this to 70, and we will go to 40 frames like this. Select this hand, move this over here, and select this hand and move this over here like this, and create another keyframe. So I'll get something like this. Now after that, I'll go to around 90 frames. I'll select this hand, I'll create one keyframe, go few frame forward. Let's bring this over here and over here, create one keyframe, go few frame forward, and select this hand, and let's move this over here something, and create another keyframe. So basically we are creating some random keyframes for this hand like this. Now same procedure we will follow for this one. I'll go to 90 frames. I'll select this hand, I'll create one keyframe, go few frame forwards. Let's select this, create one keyframe, go few frame forwards. Let's move this, sorry, select this hand, I think this hand, and move this over here, create another keyframe like this. Okay, and after that, if you see this animation from the start, I'll get this animation and this animation. Okay, now after that, what we need to do, I'll go to around 80 frames, and I'll select this hand over here, and we have this hand portion over here like this. If you see in this hand, you will get this cloner like this. And now if you select this cloner over here, and you will go, if you go to the transform, and if you not this transform, but let's go to the coordinates, and if you rotate it on this one, you will get this kind of rotation. So I'll select this cloner, I'll create one keyframe at rotation over here, then go to around, let's say 180, and let's make this 360 into 3, and hit enter and create another keyframe. So if you see this, we will get this rotating animation for this one. Now after that, I'll go to somewhere around 60, and I'll select this, go to this first hand, go inside this hand, and you will find this cloner over here, and create one keyframe at this rotation, and go to around 170, and I'm going to type minus 1080, and we will create another keyframe. So now we will get the rotation in opposite direction. Okay, so this is for entire animation. Now as you guys know that we have created this entire thing in upper portion thing over here. So this animation is resting at 60 frames, so I'll select this upper portion, I'll create one keyframe at this rotation. If you see, we can rotate it like this and this. So let's make it 0. I'll create one keyframe, I'll go to around 80, let's rotate it like this, create one keyframe, go to around 90, create one keyframe again, go to around 110, and let's make this minus 26, create another keyframe, press Ctrl Shift Z like this. So if you see this thing now, I'll get this, and then this, then let's say somewhere around 130, I'll create one keyframe, go somewhere around over here, and let's rotate it again like this, create another keyframe. So if I see this animation now, I'll get this like this. Okay, so this is for this animation. Now we also want to animate our camera. We will obviously we will see this thing whenever our camera portion is going to come in this course, but right now I'll tell you how to animate this camera also. So let's do one thing. If you guys know that this object is properly at the center, so whenever I'm going to create any null object, it will come at the center. So what we need to do, whenever this thing is going to come at the rest, make sure that your null object is over here like this, and I'm going to select this null object. I'll double click and I'll call it as center of camera, and I'll hit OK, and I'll select this camera and I'll move inside this center of camera like this. So if you hit play, we will get something like this. Now as you guys know that 200 frames is my last frame, so I'll select the center of camera. I'll create one keyframe at this rotation. I'll go to around 200 seconds, and at this point I'm going to make it 360 rotation. I'll create one keyframe, and now if I see this animation through my camera, I'll get this and then this, and even if you see hit Control R, you will get this kind of animation over here. Okay, like this. Okay, and let's do one thing. Go to the robot and we'll go to the upper portion over here, and as you guys know that at this point this is rotating from here to here, and now instead of this last keyframe, I'll simply delete those keyframes. Now I want complete rotation for this, so I'll create one keyframe over here, then I'll go somewhere around over here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it to rotate completely like this, and then I'll create one keyframe. So if I see this animation over here, I'll get this kind of animation. Okay, so you can do that also, or instead of that, if you have some other ideas, you can follow that also. And suppose instead of that, I'll select this keyframes over here. Let's delete those, and I'll select those keyframes and I'll move them over here up to 90 frames, let's say. So I'll get this rotation animation over here like this, and let's select this keyframe and move this up to 160. So if I see this animation now, I'll get this kind of rotation. Now let's go around 80 frames, and if you select this upper portion, it is 26, and because at this point it's completely minus 26, so I'll get difference. So let's make this 26 again over here to create one keyframe. So now I'll get this complete rotation of this robot. Okay, so you can do this stuff also like this. This is how you can animate this portion. And there is another thing. If you notice, if whenever this thing goes backwards, if you hit Control R, as you guys can see at this point, this is looks quite in black. So what you can do, you can select all of these lights and you can make it apparent with this camera also. So now what will happen, along with this camera, if you see, these lights are also rotating along with this null object. So whenever if I hit Control R, my lights are also going to rotate according to my object and null object like this. So this is how you will get this kind of animation, and this is how all about the animation portion. In the next chapter, we are going to talk about how to apply dynamics to this animation.